Greetings. Thank you so much for joining me today. Look at what has happened. You know, we miss it. Has Torah been messed with? I hate to think that it has, but I'm almost positive it has been messed with. We've learned lies. There's things, reading Torah. We have got to develop a discerning spirit. People are waking up all over the land. People have told us things, and finally people are beginning to realize that they've been lying to us. They lied to us about JFK assassination, the 9/11, COVID, all of these things. Is there a chance that it's spiritual lies as well? I think so. We are being pulled into a false narrative right this very moment. And we don't know it. We don't understand it. And it makes me sick. Right now, we're talking about the years. Look down here. We're talking about the years between our 71st year in Egypt, when Joseph died, to Exodus 1, which is going to be about the 112th year in Egypt. So 70 to, let's say, 11th year. That's 40 years. What happened during those 40 years between the time that Joseph died at the end of Exodus 50 and Genesis 50 and Exodus 1. 40 years has gone by. What has happened? Has it been left out purposefully? I wonder. I can't wait to see what comes out of the Vatican regarding Yehovah's Word, and also other books related to Yehovah's Word that possibly have been hidden from us. What do they call it? V, maybe you can help me. They black out certain documents so that you can't see what was there. Redacted. Thank you, V. I knew you'd come up with it for me. Yeah, they redact things. How much of Yehovah's Word has been redacted? Are we so malleable, so willing to believe that we have the exact things that have been given to us by Moses, and it has not been redacted? Look at how much stuff we're finding in Yasher. We're going to find more today that's going to make Yehovah's Word make so much more sense. Well, let me go to where we left off last week. I want to briefly talk about what has been going on. Here we are in Yasher. 61. Joseph died, 71 years. There it is right there. 71st year in Egypt, our 71st year. How old is Joseph? 71 years. Who's going to say something? Oh, our screen's not sure. You can't see my screen?
No, just the picture of the...
It's me?
Man with...
Oh. My screen looks like it's up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start resharing my screen and see if that makes a difference.
No.
You got it now?
Good.
All right.
Yep.
All right, good. So here we are, 71 years in Egypt. That's when Joseph died. Again, I'm saying that is how old Yocheved is right now, too. She's 71 years old because she was born right after we came into Egypt. Well, we saw this was a list, chronology going through. Here is the 72nd year, Zebulun dies. 75th year, Simeon. Then Zepho and Gaius have words and get into problems together. Balaam is introduced here. This was Zepho. He's trying to get Angias to go and attack Egypt and Israel's seed. Angias isn't going to do it. And now here comes Balaam. He's introduced in this chapter. This is the 75th year of us being in Egypt. So again, Balaam is introduced. This is Balaam ben Beor. Remember Beor, Balaam ben Beor, and we also had Bela ben Beor. Bela was the first king of Esau. He was Balaam's older brother, significantly older brother. Anyway, he does some conjuring, says, no, don't go to Egypt. You're going to get trapped. And Zepho's mad. So Zepho goes to Kittim. Remember, Kittim is Rome. So now we've got a son of Eliphaz, a son of Zepho ben Eliphaz ben Esau in Rome. He's going to become the king of Rome here in this chapter. He also saw a large animal, a creature, half man, half beast, devouring an ox. I questioned whether or not that was kind of a deep state kind of thing. He found it in a cave, remember? Well, we continued. We had this woman, what was her name? Jania, who was originally from Kittim. They built, remember, a big bridge somehow over the water from Kittim to Africa, Italy to Africa. Wow, that's a big change. Remember, let's talk about here's Italy, Tiber. See the Tiber River? Rome is right on the Tiber River. I think the king of Africa is right in this portion here. We're going to talk about Sardinia today, which is Sardinia. That's where his brother's going to be. Lucas, his brother, is going to be.
Michael, your share screen's gone again.
It is?
Yeah.
For all of you?
Well, for me anyway.
I've got half a screen.
Just you.
Do you have a screen?
I still have it. Did you push a button?
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wayne, I've got it. I do have a screen.
Sweet. Okay, I won't bother. I won't bother you again.
Okay. Yeah.
Wayne and
I'm recording my screen, so I think I'm going to be okay.
yeah.
Okay, we built the land bridge, long land bridge. Must have had some significantly qualified engineers to pull that off. Anyway, we had Kittim, so we moved on. Kittim comes to, Zepho. Sorry, I'm lost my train of thought here. And Gaius, king of Africa, comes to Kittim, Rome, Italy, Italia, to fight, to take tribute, to ransack the land. And Zepho stops him. Yeah, here, Zephyr reigned over the whole land of Kittim and over the land of Italia. He had already become, in that chapter, he became king of Italy. So 79th year, here is Reuben dying. Dan died in the 80th year. Then Cusham becomes dies, and Hadad ben Bedad becomes king of Esau. He's going to reign for 35 years. Issachar in the 81st year dies. 82nd year, Asher dies. 83rd year, Gad dies. 84th year, Ben-Hadad, king of Edom, and Hadad, king of Edom, that Hadad assembled Esau. They're going to fight again. Oh, yeah, that's right. Remember, Hadad decided he was going to fight with Moab. Moab had Midian join them, and then in the midst of the battle, Moab left and left Midian to be taken by Esau, Hadad, Edom. And then there was bad blood between Midian and Moab. Moab became tribute to Esau, and when Midian and the east seed started to fight Moab, then Esau, who was at war with Moab, joined with Moab to beat Esau's seed and Midian. And not Esau's seed, Eve's seed and Midian. It's crazy. My friend and my enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of things. You know, what's all that? Anyway, a lot of people died. They continued talking about 86th year. Judah died. 129 years old. 89th year, Naphtali died. Then we had a short battle with Kittim, and Gaius, king of Africa, coming again to Eliphaz. He got routed and left. And then there was peace between Kittim and Africa for quite some time, 11 years. 93rd year, that's where we left off last week. So now the only brother that is left alive is Levi. We're going to pick up reading here in the 93rd year. Remember, this is 93rd year. We have to 111 years, 112 years before we get to Exodus 1. We're not there yet. This is all happening between the death of Joseph and the end of Genesis 50. And the 93rd year died Levi, then Jacob in Egypt. And Levi was 137 years old when he died. He was the oldest of the brothers. And they put him in a coffin, and he was given into the hands of his seed, his sons, multiple generations of sons. Seed is what they are. And it came to pass after the death of Levi, when all Egypt saw that Jacob's seed, the brethren of Joseph, were dead. With that, Jacob's seed, the brethren of Joseph were dead. All the Egyptians began to afflict Jacob's seed and to embitter their lives from that day unto the day of their going forth from Egypt. They took from their hands all the vineyards and the fields which Joseph had given unto them, and all the elegant houses in which the people of Israel lived. And all the fat of Egypt the Egyptians took from Jacob's seed in those days. So they took a lot of Israel's wealth. They're doing their best to impoverish Israel. They need to have them under their authority. And the hand of Egypt, the hand of all Egypt, became more grievous in those days against Israel's seed. And the Egyptians injured the Israelites until Israel's seed were wearied of their lives on account of the Egyptians. You know, this is the first time that they're talking about the Israelites. The Egyptians injured the Israelites. That's what I call myself, the Israelites. Until Israel's seed were wearied of their lives on account of the Egyptians. And it came to pass in those days, in the 102nd year, 9 years after Levi died, of Israel going down to Egypt, that Pharaoh, king of Egypt, died. He ruled for a number of years, 32 years it says. This is, let me open this. I think this is interesting. This is the third king that we are going to be under. We're getting ready, that we are being under that's died. This is the death of the third Pharaoh that we have lived under. The first Pharaoh died in 32. Remember, then Mello took over, and Joseph reigned for another 40 years. And now, did I say Mello? No, Megron. Let me just read this. It's easier to do if I read it. And it came to pass in the 32nd year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. That is the 71st year of the life of Joseph. In that year died Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Megron, his son, reigned in his stead. And Pharaoh commanded Joseph before his death to be a father to his son. Remember that because he was taking care of Megron, he still was the head of Egypt for another 40 years after that first Pharaoh died. Let me continue. And that Megron should be, why do I have that there? And that Megron should be under the care of Joseph and under his counsel. And all Egypt consented to this thing, that Joseph should be king over them. And all the Egyptians loved Joseph. As of heretofore, only Megron, the son of Pharaoh, sat upon his father's throne, and he became king in those days in his father's stead. Megron was 40 years old when he began to reign, and 40 years he reigned in Egypt. And all Egypt called his name Pharaoh, after the name of his father, and it was as it was their custom to do in Egypt to every king that reigned over them. Megron ruled 40 years, which was the 72nd year, so he died 1 year after Joseph died. Joseph died 1 year earlier. There it is right there. The king who took Megron's place would have known Joseph and was raised with him. But on the 102nd year, so that was the third king now, but on the 102nd year, after the new king, Mello arises. So this is going to be the fourth king. And he never knew Joseph. He never knew all those people who were in Israel. Mello was only 11 years old when Levi died. So we are now on our fourth king of Egypt? Yeah, fourth king of Egypt. Well, let me continue. And it came to pass in those days, in the 102nd year of Israel going down to Egypt, that Pharaoh, king of Egypt, died. And Mello, his son, reigned in his stead. And all the mighty men of Egypt and all the generations that knew Joseph and all his brethren died in those days. And another generation rose up in their stead, which had not known Jacob's seed, and all the good which they had done to them and all their might in Egypt. Well, I'm going to put 7 verses from Exodus into here. Let's go to Exodus. You know, I should do a quick introduction to Exodus before we continue. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy is traditionally what has been called Torah. They call them the 5 books of Moses. How they begin their chapters, I think, is very significant. So I'd like to talk about it. Genesis begins with Bereshit, Bara Elohim. In the beginning, created Elohim. Starts with a B. The next 3 books start with a Vav. A Vav is kind of like a nail. Remember when, who was it? Abraham told Ishmael that he had a bad nail, a bad post in his tent, talking about his wife, because she treated Abraham so badly. And it was code for Ishmael to get rid of his wife, which he did. It's a nail. They connect things together. So the Vav that we see, Ve'elah Shemot B'nai Israel, and these are the names of Israel's seed. Starts with a V, the Vav. And, it says and. It's connecting it from the past section. So Genesis is connected to Exodus by a Vav. Numbers is going to be connected to Exodus by a Vav. No, Leviticus is going to be connected to Exodus by a Vav. Then Numbers are going to be connected to Elizabeth. But look at here. Deuteronomy doesn't have a Vav. Elah HaDevarim Asher Davir Moshe. These are the words which Moses spake. You know, this is what some of my teachers in the past have given me. And I liked much of what they had to say. I've learned from past teachers. But I've moved beyond many of the teachers that I've had. He said this. I don't even want to tell you who it is at this point. I don't think it's that significant. He says we should note another interesting pattern that appears in these opening sentences. Note that the opening sentences of the first and the last book of the Torah start with consonants other than the letter Vav. Well, the middle 3 books all begin with the letter Vav. Think about that. You know, you have somebody say something, and we just accept it as true. Let me go back up. Bereshit is the beginning. It has a Vav connecting it. The next book connects to the other one, then the next one. But Deuteronomy doesn't have a Vav. How come the back of the book isn't connected to the rest of the book? Does it stand alone? See, these are things that we have to ask ourselves. And I ask this question because I see many things in Deuteronomy that do not agree with the rest of Torah. Yet we learn every word of God is true. Every jot and tittle is there for a purpose. Well, first of all, Torah doesn't have any jots and tittles. It's just Torah. Look at, even in the first verse of Deuteronomy, here it is right here. It ends with, to all Israel. All Israel. There's no place in Torah that it talks about all Israel. It always talks about Bnei Israel. So here we have something being used that isn't the same as the rest of Torah. That alone should put some thoughts in our minds as to what's going on. Now, I'm going to show you many things. I've already showed you, even in Genesis, which we just finished a couple weeks ago. There's errors. Quite a lot of errors in Torah, in Genesis. We're going to see them in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. But when we get to Deuteronomy, we are going to see numerous. Even things that do not agree with the rest of Torah. That should put concerns in our mind. But the casual reader will never see that because they haven't learned what's there in the past. Let me just read a little bit more to you. I like this next section. In this book, we see a picture of the Torah that can be likened unto a book. The first and the last books of the Torah serve as the cover. Yeah, here we go. But the cover's not connected. Well, the middle three books are the pages bound to the cover by the letter Vav. Let us also note here that the Hebrew letter Vav is an ancient Hebrew ideograph. In its ancient Hebrew ideograph is a picture of a nail or a hook. When prefixed, when prefixed to a word, as in the examples above, the letter Vav serves as a conjunction and and. Therefore, we see from this pattern that the three middle books of the Torah are as pages which are nailed or bound to the cover of the book. See, they want to use the cover is bound, and so that's why they do this. In the case of the book of Vayikra, actually, I've got the wrong one there. That pulled this from a different note. This, in our case, would be Exodus. This connection is no small matter. The following is what was taught. The following is what I was taught. This is my words now. The following is what I was taught in my Old Testament survey class. I must have been 19, 20 years old. Community college, Old Testament survey. Boy, I wish I would have learned more there. He didn't have very much to teach me. It's called an Old Testament survey class. Really, it should have been, what happened here? Should have been called, should have been called the Words of Life survey class. Torah is the words of life. It's not the Old Testament. It's the words of life. If you want to live, if you want to experience abundance in this life, as well as the next, and I'm talking about being raised from the dead, next life, eternal life. If you want to excel in this life and have an eternal life, you've got to learn the words of life. Most have said the words of life are not important. I'm here to tell you they're very important. We've learned lies. This is what I was taught. I'm going to read now to you what I was taught in this class. The JEPD theory. Not that I want you to agree, but I want you to know about it. There are many biblical scholars who hold to what is known as the documentary theory. This theory teaches that the Torah was not received by Moses at Mount Sinai, but was put together by many authors and editors over a long period of time. It was taught that various independent traditions were preserved and recorded by various groups, and at a later date artistically edited together by others. These scholars teach that one group used the name Yahweh or Yehovah, while yet another group used the name Elohim. Where in the Torah do we just see Elohim? It's not there. It is taught that a priestly group from the time of the temple codified the temple service and wrote the priestly materials, including a large portion of Leviticus. And the Deuteronomists redacted the whole book together into a cohesive package we see today. This theory is referred to by the initials JEPD, Yahwists, Elohists, priestly, and Deuteronomists. Well, this theory may at first seem to have merit. Careful study provides a great deal of evidence to refute it. Yeah, that's the only part I put in green, because it's true. One such piece of evidence is the fact that our portion begins with the letter Vav, or a conjunction and. It should be clear from the very beginning words of this portion that the book of Exodus was not written separately from the book of Genesis. The two are, in fact, one continuous narrative. The word and the conjunction serve to bind the word and the conjunction serve to bind two words used to bind two words, objects or phrases together, such as soup and sandwiches, love and marriage, black and white. For our portion to begin with the word and implies that it is directly tied to what is preceding it. Now, that said, the reason I'm giving you what's happening in these last 40 years between the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus is for this very reason, so you can see how closely they are knit together. But I think our Torah has likely been greatly redacted to take out all the things that have to do with those missing years, especially as they relate to Esau's seed. Is it an accident that Esau's seed, Zepho, Ben Eliphaz, Ben Esau, ended up as the king of Rome? I don't think it's an accident. I think there's things that have been hidden from us so that we don't know what's actually happened in history. I'm so grateful for the book of Yasher. That said, let's start the first 7 verses of Exodus. Now, these are the names of Israel's seed who came to Egypt, each man and his household. For the most part, each man, of course, is Israel's seed, his sons, the 12 sons, and their sons, with a couple exceptions. The couple exceptions. Dinah is going to be in the number. And so is Sarah, daughter of Dan, adopted daughter of Dan, stepchild of Dan, is going to be in it also. And I think the two women are included because they're talked about in Torah. Were there other women who came to Egypt with these men and their son? Sorry. And their sons? Of course. These people didn't just have sons, but women are not counted. The wives are not counted. The wives of the sons, they weren't counted. Rachel, Leah, Zilpah, Bilhah weren't counted. Why? They're bone of their man's bone and flesh of their man's flesh. They are counted in their man. Well, that doesn't fit well into the doctrines and traditions of men that we now have. So it lists the names of the sons. It says, all these were the descendants of Jacob. All those who were descendants of Jacob. I'm going to turn off this volume if I can. My sister's calling. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. For Joseph was in Egypt already. What does it really say? It says all those that were descendants of Jacob. Here's what it actually says. And all the souls that came out of Jacob's loins were 70 souls. You know what? That's not right. It's not right. 66 souls is what they list here in Genesis 46. All the souls that went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his loins besides Jacob's sons, remember they were already there, were 66. The 66 doesn't count Jacob, and it doesn't count Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Four of them. So 66 plus the 4, that's 7. Joseph and Jacob is counted in the 4. He's not enumerated in the 66. So there's questions here. This is not technically all correct. It says for Joseph was already in Egypt. Well, so is Manasseh and Ephraim. Then it says Joseph died. Oh, Yarek. Came from his thighs. It's not thighs. Yarek, look what it says. A euphemism, the generative parts. What are the generative parts that these sons and a couple daughters came from? His testicles. Euphemistically, his balls. That's what we're talking about, Yarek. Here's the 66. 32 from Leah, counting Dinah, but not Yocheved. She wasn't counted because she was in uterus, but she wasn't born until she came to Egypt. Zilpah had 16, counting Sarah. Sarah is counted. Why? Because I think Dinah is counted, and Sarah is counted because they had a story about them in the Torah, in Genesis. Remember, Dinah was raped. Sarah was the one who was there to comfort Jacob when he found out that Joseph was alive. They were concerned he was going to have a heart attack. Rachel had 11, not counting Joseph and his 2 sons. And Bilhah had 7. Well, you can kind of see how they all fit together. Did somebody want to say something? Okay, guess not. Okay, remember, this does not count Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, Bilhah, or any of the sons' women, except Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and who was Simeon's first woman, and Sarah. It does count Sarah. Again, these are people who were talked about separately, so they get to be named. But I know there was other women, sons or daughters that probably of Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, Bilhah, but certainly daughters of the sons that were not enumerated in the 66, but they still went to Egypt. Again, we're talking about men. Verse 6, and Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. That's what we just finished enumerating. We saw all the brothers were dying until Levi was dead. He was the last to perish. But Israel's seed were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. And that's all we're going to read from this right now. We're going to see what's going to happen. Remember, I want you to see the story, and then we can read about it. There's a reason all this is tied together. Genesis is tied together with Exodus. So look what it says now. We're going to pick up in verse 6. Therefore, all Egypt began from that day forth to embitter the lives of Jacob's seed, and to afflict them with all manner of hard labor, because they had not known their ancestors who had delivered them in those days in the days of the famine. And this was also from Jehovah, for Israel's seed to benefit them in the latter days. This affliction that they're receiving right now is for our benefit. Yes, I think it is. In order that Israel's seed might know Jehovah, their Elohim. And in order to know the signs and mighty wonders which Jehovah would do in Egypt on account of Israel's people, in order that Israel's seed might fear Jehovah Elohim of their ancestors and walk in all his ways, they and their seed after them all the days. You know, it really bothers me talking about Israel's seed walking in his ways and in the ways of their ancestors. So many will say they believe in Jesus, and now they're Israel. Do you honestly think, have you ever honestly thought that to be in Jehovah's kingdom, you've got to keep his ways, walk in his ways? Can you be his people without leaving the kingdom of your birth and learning to walk in Jehovah's ways? Read Isaiah 56. The ger will be accepted in the temple if they keep the Sabbath and learn Jehovah's ways. Then at Passover, they can become Jehovah's son, talking to men, not ladies. But yet I hear constantly people saying, I'm Israel. They're claiming the promises that Jehovah gave to Israel without ever learning Jehovah's ways. You think, I see this life as a bit of a test. If we can't learn to live according to Jehovah's ways, won't even try to learn according to Jehovah's ways in this life, why would we want to do it for an eternity? And the other hand is what Jehovah thinks. If you can't learn to live, or try even to live according to his ways now, why would he want you in his kingdom for an eternity? Folks, he wouldn't. He would not like that. You're fooling yourselves. You followed a false narrative. Learn the words. What did I call it? I forget the name, what I called it. Not the Old Testament. The book of life. Learn the words of life that are in the Torah. We've got to change our ways. Bello was 20 years old when he began to reign. You know, this is interesting. He reigned 94 years. This is, he was 11 years old when Levi died. So he knew Levi, or he could have known Levi. He didn't, I'm sure. Didn't know Levi at all. But he could have. For 11 years, they overlapped. But look at this. He's going to reign 94 years. When is he taking over? Did we say? I don't remember what word it was. Well, here, I probably have it here. He took over in the 102nd year. 102nd year. Our years in Egypt. That's when he took over. He's going to reign 94 years. That means he's going to die in our 196th year in Egypt. We're going to leave in the 210th year in Egypt. Contrary to so many that believe we're going to be there for 430 years. You don't know the Torah. You haven't learned line upon line, precept upon precept. Remember, Jochebed came in our first year in Egypt. She's already 102 right now. She's going to have Moses around 130. And he's going to deliver Egypt when he's around 80. 210. That means that this king is the king Melao, I guess is what it is. I say Melao. He's the king that is going to have Moses in his household. Remember, it was the king's daughter who took Moses from the river. Moses is going to be trained to reign over men in Pharaoh's house. I said, we were in Egypt 210 years. So we lived under 5 pharaohs. The last pharaoh, wait till you see the last pharaoh. What an ignoramus he is. You won't believe it. I'll wait and surprise you. And all Egypt called his name Pharaoh after the name of his father, as was their custom to do to every king who reigned over them in Egypt. And at that time, the troops of Angias, king of Africa, went forth to spread along the land of Kittim, as usual for plunder. Remember, it was 11 years ago that they got chased out by Kittim seed, Rome's seed, led by Esau. Then Zepho, ben Eliphaz, ben Esau, heard their report, and he went forth to meet them with his army, and he fought with them in the road. And Zepho smote the troops of the king of Africa with the edge of the sword, and left none remaining of them. And not even one returned to his master in Africa. 11 years ago, pretty much the same thing happened. Now he sends more troops to Kittim, and Esau cleans them all. Nobody comes home. And then Gaius heard of this which Zepho ben Eliphaz had done to all his troops, that he had destroyed them, and Gaius assembled all his troops, all the men of the land of Africa, a people numerous as the numerous like the sands of the seashore. Usually that's around 800,000. And then Gaius sent to Lucas, his brother, saying, come to me. Oh, here we have Lucas. What does it say? Does anyone find it interesting to see that these kings are related? All these kings are related. Look at the king of Africa is related to the king of Sardinia. Sardina. Zepho, king of Egypt, is related to Esau's grandson, who serves the king of Africa. Zepho, king of Egypt. Zepho, king of Egypt. What did I say? King of Egypt. Esau's grandson. Does anyone find it interesting that the kings are related? This note is erroneous. Zepho, king of, he's right now the king of Kittim, king of Rome, is related to Esau's grandson. Okay, Zepho is Esau's grandson, who serves, who served, there we go, that's the problem, who served the king of Africa for a time. He served, Zepho, remember, he was ahead of the king of Africa's host. But when the king of Africa wouldn't go to Egypt to destroy Egypt and Jacob's seed, he left and went to Kittim. Now we have Angias, who is the king of Africa, who is related to his brother. His brother is Lucas. Of course, he's related to his brother, who has a brother, Lucas, who is the king of Sardinia. I'm talking about deep staters. These people are related. Is that an accident? This is what we're seeing all the time. What is it? The Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, is the son of Castro, the king of Cuba. This happens all the time. We're going to see many of our presidents and other politicians are related to awful, awful people. Yeah, I don't need to read you this. We're gonna come to this in a second. Let me continue reading. And Gaius sent to Lucas's brother, saying, "Come to me with all thy men, and help me smite Zepho and all Kittim's seed, who have destroyed my men." And Lucas came with his whole army, a very great force, to assist Angias, his brother, to fight with Zepho and Kittim's seed. And Zepho and Kittim's seed heard this thing. They were greatly afraid, and great terror fell upon their hearts. This is a very large army that's coming against them. And Zepho also sent a letter to the land of Edom, to Hadad ben-Bedad, king of Edom, and to Esau's seed, saying, "I have heard that Angias, king of Africa, is coming to us with his brother for battle against us, and we are greatly afraid of him. For his army is very great, particularly as he comes against us with his brother and his army likewise. Now therefore come you also up to me and help me, and we will fight together against Angias and his brother Lucas, and you will save us out of their hands. But if not, know ye that we shall all die." He is very concerned. Watch what happens. And Esau's seed sent a letter to Kittim's seed and to Zepho their king, saying, "We cannot fight against Angias and his people, for a covenant of peace has been between us these many years, from the days of Bela ben Beor, the first king, and from the days of Joseph ben Jacob, king of Egypt. with whom we fought on the other side of the Jordan when we buried our father. There it is, the other side. Whenever we talk about the other side of the Jordan, they're talking about Israel. And when Joseph, I want to someday live in the other side of the Jordan. And Zepho heard the words of his brother and Esau's seed, and he refrained from them. And Zepho was greatly afraid of Angias. And Angias and Lucas's brother arrayed all their forces, about 800,000 men, against Kittim's seed. And all Kittim's seed said to Zepho, "Pray for us to the Elohim of thy ancestors." They know his lineage. "Peradventure, he may deliver us from the hand of Angias and his army, for we have heard that he is a great God, a great Elohim, and that he delivers all who trust in him." And Zepho heard their words, and Zepho sought Yehovah. He sought Yehovah. He knows the name of Yehovah. And said, "O Yehovah, Elohim of Abraham and Isaac, my ancestors, this day I know that thou art a true God, a true Elohim. And all the Elohim of the nations are vain and useless. Remember now this day unto me thy covenant with Abraham, our father, which our ancestors related to us, and do graciously with me this day for the sake of Abraham and Isaac, our fathers, and save me and Kittim's seed from the hand of the king of Africa who comes against us for battle." Look at this. The seed, Zepho, is praying to Yehovah to be delivered, and Yehovah heard it. Look at, and Yehovah hearkened to the voice of Zepho. And he had regard for him on account of Abraham and Isaac. And Yehovah delivered Zepho and Kittim's seed from the hand of Angias and his people. And Zepho fought Angias, king of Africa, and all his people on that day. And Yehovah gave all the people of Angias into the hand of Kittim's seed. And the battle was severe upon Angias. And Zepho smote all Angias's men and Angias and Lucas's brothers' men with the edge of the sword. And there fell from them unto evening that day 400,000 men. Half of the men of Angias and Zeph and Lucas died. And when Angias saw that all his men perished, he sent a letter to the inhabitants of Africa to come to him to assist him in the battle. And he wrote in the letter saying, "All who are found in Africa, let them come unto me from 10 years old and upward. Let them all come unto me, and behold, if he comes not, he shall die, and all he has with his whole household the king will take." And all he has with his whole household the king will take. And all the rest of the inhabitants of Africa, we're talking about men. You're always going to say it. And all the rest of the inhabitants of Africa were terrified at the words of Angias. And there went out of the city about 300,000 men and boys from 10 years upward. And they came to Angias. So we're talking about old men. We're talking about very young boys. Another 400,000, 300,000. So he had 800,000, got whittled down to 400,000. Now he's going to add another 300,000. He's got 700,000 coming against them now. At the end of the 10 days, Angias renewed his battle against Zepho and Kittim's seed. And the battle was very great and strong between them. Well, look what it says. And from the army of Angias and Lucas, Zepho sent many wounded onto his hands. About 200,000 men. Zepho took out 200,000 of those men. And Sosiftar, the captain of the host of Angias, fell in the battle. And when Sosiftar had fallen, the African troops turned their backs to flee. They fled, and Angias and Lucas, his brother, were with them. So of the 7,000 men, counting the 4,000, remember there was 4,000 there, they added another 3,000, 7,000, only 2,000, no, that was 100,000. Yeah, 300,000. Only 2,000 men died. I'm hoping that the boys were safe. The older men were safe. That there was the more qualified men who died. But that's a pretty small amount, considering that we were talking about 400,000 that died the first time. So much less died. So now it says, and when this commander died, captain of the host died, Sosiftar had fallen, the African troops turned their backs to flee, and they fled. And Gaius and Lucas, his brother, were with them. They can't fault anybody who did come that's now running away, because they're running away. And Zepho and Katim's seed pursued them. They smote them still heavily in the road. 200 men. That doesn't sound too heavily. So not very many died. 2,200 men so far. And they pursued Asdrubal, the son of Angias, who had fled with his father, and they smote 20 of his men in the road. And Asdrubal escaped from Katim's seed, and they did not slay him. And Angias and Lucas, his brother, fled with the rest of their men, and they escaped and came into Africa with terror and consternation. And Angias feared all the days lest Zepho ben Eliphaz should go to war with them. They don't ever want to go to war with Zepho ben Eliphaz again. But now look at what happens. Balaam. Remember, he was introduced last time. And here he is again. And Balaam ben Beor was at that time with Angias in the battle. And when he saw Zepho prevailed over Angias, he fled from there and came to Katim. He always switches sides to go to the winning team. You're going to see this. He's going to go from Egypt. No, he's going to go from Katim to Egypt. He's going to go from Egypt to another city. And from another city, he's going to go still another later on. This man is constantly moving. And Balaam ben Beor was at that time with Angias in the battle. And he saw that Zepho prevailed over Angias, and he fled from there and came to Katim. And Zepho, remember Zepho was captain of the hosts of Angias for a long time. He knew Zepho. And Zepho and Katim's seed received him with great honor, for Zepho knew Balaam's wisdom. And Zepho gave unto Balaam many gifts, and he remained with him. And when Zepho had returned from war, he commanded all Katim's seed to be numbered who had gone to battle with him. And behold, not one was missing. Isn't that interesting? He had the blessing of Yehovah. Yehovah was with him, and nobody died. You'd think that would change some things, wouldn't you? But look what happens. And Zepho rejoiced at this thing, and he renewed his kingdom, and he made a feast to all his subjects. And Zepho remembered not Yehovah, and considered not that Yehovah had helped him in the battle, and that he had delivered, him and all his people from the hands of the king of Africa, but still walked in the ways of Katim's seed and wicked Esau's seed. to serve their Elohim, which his brother and Esau's seed had taught him. Is it therefore said, from the wicked goes forth wickedness? Ooh, this is so interesting. Do you know where we heard these words last? Do you remember? It was when we were talking about Nimrod. Remember, Nimrod had the garments that his father Ham had given him. The garments that belonged to Adam and Hava. Adam and Hava. It gave Nimrod strength. And this is what it said in Yasher when we were talking about Nimrod. And all the earth was in one tongue. This is at the Tower of Babel at time period. And all the earth was one tongue, and the words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the way of Yehovah. This is what we're talking about. Zepho, right this very moment, did not go in the way of Yehovah. He was more wicked than all the men that went before him from the days of the flood until those days. And he made Elohims of wood and stone and bowed down to them, and he rebelled against Jehovah and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon, his son, was more wicked than his father. This is kind of like Zepho is more wicked than his father, Esau. Remember, it was Esau who killed him. He stole the garments. Mardon was his son was more wicked than his father. And everyone that heard the acts of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, would say concerning him, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. This is what's going on right now. They're talking about Zepho. From the wicked, Esau, goes forth wickedness. Therefore, it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. And it was current in the days of men from that time till this. Yeah, so interesting. And Zepho reigned over Kittim's seed securely. But he knew not Yehovah, who had delivered him and all his people from the hand of the king of Africa. And the troops of Africa came no more to Kittim to plunder as usual, for they knew the power of Zepho, who had smitten them all at the edge of the sword. So Engaias was afraid of Zepho ben Eliphaz and Kittim's seed all the days. At that time, Zepho returned from at that time when Zepho returned from the war. When Zepho had seen he had prevailed over Africa's people and had smitten them in battle at the edge of the sword, then Zepho advised Kittim's seed to go to Egypt to fight with Jacob's seed and with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He's got a big head now because Jehovah helped him. Now he's going to go fight against Jehovah's sons. Sheesh, does he ever learn? And Zepho heard that the mighty men of Egypt were dead. Yeah, he heard Levi's dead. All the sons are dead. The mighty men of Egypt. Who are the mighty men of Egypt? I wonder if they are like Manasseh and Ephraim and their seed. Maybe, I don't know. But there were some mighty men in Egypt, but not like these guys were. We're dead. And all their seed, Israel's seed, remained in Egypt. And Zepho considered to go to fight against them and all Egypt, to avenge the cause of his brethren Esau's seed, whom Joseph with his brother and all Egypt had smitten in the land of Canaan when they went to bury Jacob in Hebron. You know, you'd think he's mad because that's where Esau got killed, and maybe 200 other men, perhaps. I think it might even have been 20. It was then a few days later that a whole bunch died that came to Egypt. But in the land, there wasn't very many that died. Esau mainly got his head cut off by Dan's son. I would think that he would be more angry about being held captive in Egypt for 41 years. Remember, Zepho and 20 of his men? I forget how many men he had. They were held captive for 41 years. And it was after Joseph died that he left and got free. And Zepho sent messengers to Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom, and to all his brethren Esau's seed, saying, Did you not say that you would not fight against the king of Africa, for he was a member of your covenant? Behold, I fought him and smote him and all his people. Now, therefore, I have resolved. He's saying how strong he is. Didn't lose a guy. I'm so good. And now, therefore, I have resolved to fight against Egypt and Jacob's seed, who are there, and I will be revenged of them for what Joseph and his brethren and the ancestor did to us in the land of Canaan when they went to bury their father in Hebron. Now then, if you are willing to come to me, assist me in fighting against them in Egypt, then shall we avenge the cause of our brethren. This is an old feud. We're talking almost 100 years. And Esau's seed hearkened to the words of Zepho. And Esau's seed gathered themselves together, a very great people. And they went to assist Zepho and Kittim's seed in battle. And Zepho sent to all the east seed and to all Ishmael's seed with words like these. And they gathered themselves and came to assist Zepho and Kittim's seed in the war upon Egypt. And all these kings, the king of Edom, the east seed, Ishmael's seed, and Zepho, king of Kittim, went forth and arrayed all their hosts in Hebron. That's where they're gathering together. Look at how big it is. The camp was very heavy, extended a length and distance of 3 days' journey. They're not even measuring it in numbers. They're measuring it in length because they don't know the number. A people numerous as the sands of the seashore, which cannot be counted. I'm guessing millions of people, men, were there. And all these kings and their hosts went down and came against all Egypt in battle and encamped together in the valley of Pethros. Let me show you where they're going to meet. It's right here. Let me go do this. Save, open. Here it is. They're going to meet here. Top Penkas. Here's Goshen. This is where Israel's seed is at. This is where these armies, as numerous as the sands of the seas that they cannot be counted, are gathering. No, have come to. They gathered in Hebron. They came to here. And all Egypt heard the report, and they gathered themselves together, all the people of the land of Egypt, and all the cities belonging to Egypt, about 300,000 men. So they've gathered 300,000 men to fight an million plus man armies. And the men of Egypt sent also to Israel's seed, who were in those days in the land of Goshen, to come to them in order to go and fight with these kings. Come fight with us. We need your help. Look at what they send. And Israel's men assembled and were about 150 men. And they went into battle to assist the Egyptians. So the Egyptians have 300,000 men, and Israel brings 150. And Israel's men of Egypt went forth, about 300,000 men and 150 men. And they went toward these kings to battle. And they placed themselves from without the land of Goshen opposite Pathros. I didn't know where Pathros is at. I knew where Tahpanhes is, and we'll see that in just a second. And the Egyptians believed not in Israel to go with them in their camp together for battle. For all the Egyptians said, perhaps Israel's seed will deliver us into the hands of Esau and Ishmael's seed, for they are their brethren. And the Egyptians said unto Israel's seed, remain you here together in your stand, and we will go fight against Esau's seed and Ishmael. But if these kings should prevail over us, then come you together upon them and assist us. And Israel's seed did so. And Zepho ben Eliphaz ben Esau, you think it's interesting that they're always taking us back to Esau. Zepho ben Eliphaz ben Esau, king of Kittim, Rome. Is that an accident? And Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom, and all their camps, all the east seed, all Ishmael's seed, a people numerous as the sand, encamped together in the valley of Pathros, opposite, there it is, Tahpanhes. And Balaam, there's Balaam ben Beor, Balaam ben, how do I even say this? Beor the Syrian. They're talking about the son of Beor the Syrian. Balaam, the son of Beor the Syrian, was there in the camp of Zepho. And he came with Kittim's seed to the battle. And Balaam was a man highly honored in the eyes of Zepho and his men. And Zepho said unto Balaam, try by divination for us, that we may know who will prevail in battle, we or the Egyptians. And Balaam rose up and tried the art of divination, and he was skillful in knowledge of it. But he was confused. And the work was destroyed in his hand. And he tried again, but it did not succeed. And Balaam despaired of it and left it and did not complete it. For this was from Jehovah, in order to cause Zepho and his people to fall into the hands of who? Israel's seed. 1,000,000 men falling into the hand of 150 men who had trusted in Jehovah, the Elohim of their ancestors, in their war. So interesting, they're discounting the 300,000 men that Egypt even had. And Zepho and Hadad put their forces in battle array, and all the Egyptians went alone against them, 300,000 men, and not one man of Israel was with them. And the Egyptians fought with these kings opposite Pathros and Tahpanhes. And the battle was severe against the Egyptians. And the kings were stronger than the Egyptians in the battle. and 180 men of Egypt fell in that day. That's hardly any. 180 out of 300,000. And about 30 men of the forces of the kings. And all the men of Egypt fled from before the kings. So Esau's seed and Esau and Ishmael's seed pursued the Egyptians, continuing to smite them unto the place where was the camp of Israel's seed. And the Egyptians cried to Israel's seed, saying, hasten unto us and assist us and save us from the hand of Esau, Ishmael, and hand of Esau, Ishmael, and Kittim's seed. And 150 men of Israel's seed ran from their station to the camps of the kings. And Israel's seed cried to Jehovah to deliver them. Let me just mention, and I'm going to make a note here right now while I'm thinking about that. Here's what the note's going to say. 1 million against 150. No, I should say it. Well, we get the idea. Against 150 men is 6,666. Shall I say? No, let's say that right. 2, 1 odds. Isn't that interesting? 6666. 1 million divided by 150,000 is 1 to 666 odds. That's the ratio. Isn't that interesting? And Jehovah hearkened to Israel. And Jehovah gave all the men of the kings into their hands. And Israel's seed fought against these kings. And Israel's seed smote 4,000 of the king's men. What is this note here? 4,000. That's not even, that's 5% of the men that were there from the kings. And Jehovah threw a great consternation into the camp of the kings, so that fear of Israel fell upon them. And all the hosts of the kings fled from before Israel's seed, and Israel's seed pursued them, continuing to smite them unto the border of the land of Cush. And I don't know for sure where the land of Cush is. I would like to believe that it is south and east of Egypt, but I don't know that for sure. Moses is eventually going to be the king of Cush. I know. Doesn't say that in Torah, does it? And Israel's seed slew them in the road, yet 2,000 men, hardly any. And Israel's seed, and of Israel's seed, not one fell. And when the Egyptians saw that Israel's seed had fought with such few men with the kings, and that the battle was so very severe against them, all Egypt were greatly afraid of their lives on account of the strong battle. And all Egypt fled, every man hiding himself from the arrayed forces. And they hid themselves in the road, and they left the Israelites to fight. Hear that? The Israelites came to back them up, and they left the Israelites. That's exactly what Moab did to Midian when they were fighting Esau. Moab left. Midian was helping them. Well, the same thing happened now. And Israel's seed inflicted a terrible blow upon the king's men, and they returned from them after they had driven them to the border of the land of Cush. And all Israel knew the thing which Egypt's men had done to them, and that they fled from them in the battle and had left them to fight alone. So Israel's seed also acted with cunning. And as Israel's seed returned from the battle, they found some of the Egyptians in the road and smote them there. And whilst they slew them, they said unto them these words, Wherefore did you go from us to leave us, being few number, to fight against those kings who had a great people to smite us, that you might thereby deliver your own souls? Oh yeah, they were pissed. And some of the Israelites met on the road, and some which the Israelites met on the road, Israel's seed, spoke to each other, saying, Smite, smite, for he is an Ishmaelite, or an Edomite, or a Kittim seed. And they stood over him and slew him, and they knew that he was an Egyptian. So now they're killing Egyptians on purpose. On purpose. And Israel's seed did these things cunningly against the Egyptians because they had departed from them in battle and had fled from them. And Israel's seed slew of the men of Egypt in the road in this manner about 200 men. Remember, the 1,000,000-man army that came against them only slew 180 men. Maybe it was 120 men. I forget exactly what it was now. It's just, we could look it up, but it doesn't matter. 120, 180, doesn't matter. Say it was 180. They slew 200. They killed more of the Egyptians than the kings did. Interesting. And all the men of Egypt saw the evil which Israel's seed had done to them. So all Egypt's seed feared greatly Israel's seed, for they had seen their great power, and that not one man of them had fallen. All Israel's seed returned with joy on their road to Goshen, and the rest of Egypt returned each man to his place. Wow. This is the rest of the story, you guys. Now, let's look at 6 verses in Torah before we close. Here they are, starting at 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the people, Israel's seed's people, are more and mightier than we. Do you hear what they're saying? Do you understand what we just read? More and mightier than we. We just fought a 1,000,000 people army, and they killed us. Yet 150 Israelites were able to chase them away. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. Therefore they said, taskmasters, we're going to see this next week over them. You know what? I'm going to stop right here. Not even going to finish this yet. Yeah, I'm going to stop right here. 10. We'll do the rest of this next week because they're going to set taskmasters over them next week. I want you to read about it first in Yasher. Normally, I would have you read this first, but I want to read Yasher first. So let's stop here at 10. You guys, I hope that this is starting to make more sense. I hope you're starting to see how wicked Esau's seed is. Is Esau's seed still in the land? Could they be the Khazarians? The cabal that has been against the whole earth and is hopefully being cleaned up even as we speak these days? I think they could. Well, time will tell. We've got lots to learn. Keep an open mind. You know what? I always read the children of Israel. I read the children of Israel as Israel's seed. We're talking about men. It used to say, I remember when I was a boy, the Bible said, the men of Israel. Then I started seeing the children of Israel. Well, that's a big difference. We're not talking about ladies. Ladies didn't receive the commandments. Israel's seed received the commandments, but Israel's seed is a spiritual group of men. Men who are in covenant with Yehovah. We talk about Ishmael's seed. These are all the men, multi-generations of men who came from Ishmael. When we talk about Esau's seed, same way. Multi-generations of men who came from Esau. Sometimes the seed overlap. Adam's seed has all the men that came from Adam. For us, Noah would probably be more pertinent because all those men died. Now all the men that came from Noah are on the earth. But they're all multi-generations of men when we're talking about B'nai. Not talking about ladies ever. Ladies, you are bone of your man's bone and flesh of your man's flesh. Or you're simply under a man's covering. I purposely choose the words I choose because I want you to challenge you to think a different way. Please give me the grace to show you another way. I can help you understand Yehovah's words. It'll make a big difference in your life if you'll just open your mind and listen. But don't be trapped in the doctrines and traditions of men that we have learned for so long. Well, I'm going to have to stop here. I'll just be going too long. All right. I love you. Thank you for joining me today, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining me.